Go ahead.
But yeah, how many people think it's okay to just allow someone to continue in an identity of victimhood just because these things happen to them? Like, oh, well, this is just who you are now. So it's like, yeah, you can learn how to function around that, but like, this is a cloak you're going to wear forever. And I'm like, that's horrible. That's crazy. And who wants any part of that? Like, I didn't want any part of that. But you take a lot of flack for the other part, that where you decide, I'm going to take responsibility for everything that happened to me in my life, good, bad, ugly, all of it. And I'm going to look at what belief systems, what I inherited from my parents, what all of that kind of stuff. I'm going to look at what brought me to this place, what brought me where I am right now.
So this is interesting because I've had people say to me before, of course, coming from a spiritual perspective, um, and they're attempting to understand themselves, and they get on this path of, well, I chose to come here, and I chose my trauma, and I have had a problem with it because I'm like, I don't believe as a soul I choose trauma. I believe I can choose to come here, understanding the process of what it means to be human, and that includes trauma. But if you're telling me that as a soul, I said, let me have this, let's have this problem and let's have this problem, maybe I did. Maybe I did. Uh, I don't know. But it's hard for me to come to grips with the fact that as a God being, as a being of light and full understanding, that I was selecting out from a library my traumas and going, I'll have this problem and let me have this problem. I do think it's possible to consider that, yes, as a conscious being, before I've deposited myself and focused energy as a human, that I'm like, okay, I choose to have this experience and whatever comes out of it. And that's why I feel like the scripture in the Bible that says, and we know that all things work together for good according to the called, the ones that are called according to his purpose, according to those that are called according to his purpose. And for a long time, I think that's just like a prayer of hope for most people. It's like, my life has been such crap. Like, I hope God turns this around for good. But it's like, no, when you look at it really from a place of awareness, I feel like you can come to the point of understanding, oh, I did know coming in, there's going to be a moment where I get to turn all of this around. So I'm willing to go have the experience, because at some moment I get to remember myself and remember, oh, I had the power to control this whole thing from jump. Because here's my experience of that. If I know I have the power to choose my experience, you tell me I'm going to choose the worst one possible? No, no. I'm
Right.
going to choose the best one possible. I heard someone say one time, if there was nobody on the planet, no one existed, it was just you, would you still want to drive the fancy cars you want to drive? Would you still want to live in the big houses you want to live in? Would you still want to eat the best food? Would you still? And I'm like, yes.
Yeah.
They were doing it in a way to like prove we only do this for people's approval. And I think on a level that can be true. But then you get to a place in your life where you're like, no, if I'm going to be anywhere, ever focused as consciousness experiencing itself, let me have the best experience I can possibly have.
Yep. Yep.
So that's what I ultimately believe is true about the root of us.
Mm-hmm.
I don't believe my soul's going, yeah, let's throw in a little, trauma here, and you got abused by this person here, and you got left here, and you were abandoned here. I think that the soul says, I understand there's some things that come along with this trip,
Yep.
but I also know I have the power to reverse it. I have the power to forgive it. I have the power to correct it. So I'm willing to go have the experience because I can undo it anytime I choose.
That's
When
the
I
good news.
that's the good news.
That's the gospel. That's the good news right there in a nutshell.
It's
That's it.
powerful. So
Yeah.
powerful. You and I have been having conversation all morning, but I wanted to see if you would kind of lead us into the conversation with the thoughts that you were having. You and I've talked a few times this week about this particular topic, um, based on Neville Goddard's teachings. So do you mind? Like,
Yeah. So, I mean, I think it came about honestly because that a friend of mine just had a session. And it has brought up a lot of conversation between the two of us. Well, and you, like it's brought up a conversation like between the three of us. And it's brought up kind of like my own internal kind of dialogue with the concept of like personality versus soul. And so I think that was kind of the jumping off point for like my mind to do what it does with it. But I started off thinking about personality versus soul and what that looked like. And I was kind of just asking myself, in what places am I still operating predominantly anyway out of personality and not tapping into, for lack of a better kind of way to put that, my soul. And immediately like that concept of like demonstration popped up to me, which this concept of demonstration, like I'm like Jody and I've talked about it, like it's just that concept that's like I need to demonstrate something. I need to create something, manifest something, make something appear in my life. That kind of feeling. And if you look at like Jesus in the Bible, for example, Jesus did a lot of demonstration, but it absolutely came from like the course of him just being who he was. It was just like, like the woman who touched his cloak and he was like, oh, I just felt power go out from me. Like, who touched me? Like, she's immediately healed, right?
Right.
But he's not over here like attempting to demonstrate anything. It just flowed from him. And
Mm-hmm.
so I think that one of the things, like one of the places for me, and this is what I was examining this morning, are the places where in my personality, in all of my personality, I still feel like there are things that I am trying to demonstrate, right? Instead of demonstrating from that place of being, I am very aware of the trying part. Am I making sense?
Yep.
Okay.
Yep. Well, interestingly, you and I have had this conversation a little bit today and previously. And in some of the session work that I do, I get to encounter people's personalities. And you and I've done it in healing spaces too together, where you encounter someone's personality and it's like, this is how they show up. This is their demeanor. Their body is held in a certain way based on their personality, all of it. And then there's a moment where bringing people into a space of alignment, of like deep connection with God and inside of them, um, their whole body shifts. Everything shifts and something happens, and it's like their humanity gets dropped.
Yeah.
All of the conditioning of being human gets dropped. And you just get to experience the truth of them. And interestingly, I had someone message me this morning outside of our conversation. I had another person message me and say, I'm having this experience on my body. And it's so funny because it was very similar to what you and I were conversing about, but it was someone entirely different. I'm having this experience. I'm struggling to connect with myself deeply to find out what's going on. Do you think you could check in? And I said, okay. So I kind of did my thing, like I normally do when I get into these healing spaces. And what was so interesting was their personality was raging. And it was very difficult to get to the truth of who they were because the personality was just like having a fit and expressing so much. And so I waited for a little bit and I was like, all right, giving you time to just have your little fit. Let's see what's going on. And then the information started to come through and I was picking up on this like overwhelm of irritation that their personhood was experiencing. The soulish aspect of them was at complete ease, and almost witnessing this other aspect be like freaking out. And it was like overwhelmed with irritation. Of course, their body was saying the same thing. Their body was expressing the irritation everywhere. And it was just like, I'm overwhelmed with irritating thoughts. I can't even get to which one it is that's causing the problem. And it was like It was like their human aspect was going, get this off of me. Like, get this off of me. I want this off. The soul was at ease. And so I kind of went through a process, asked some questions, found out exactly what it was that had triggered this moment. And I sent them back a message and I said, this is what it is coming through. This is when it happened. And this is specifically what was said to me. And they were like, oh my God, I had a feeling it was connected to this. And this is like weeks old, you know? And so I said, this is what I think you need to bring the body back into harmony with what's true. And they said, okay, I'm gonna go handle it. And so they did. But I got to have more conversation with them later in the day. And I said, you know, there's this part of you that really is possessive of your anger. And it's like, I want to feel my feelings. Don't tell me not to feel my feelings. I get to have them. And I said, the truth is you do get to have them, but release them. Right. The problem is you're having them and then storing them for a rainy day. And your body's like, we got too much going on here. And I said, the essence of you, specifically you, is joy, pure joy. So if you're trying to hold anger and store it up for a rainy day in a space where joy is supposed to be, these are butting heads. You're creating the conflict in yourself. Yeah. So your body starts to erupt, going, I got to get this anger out. I can't hold it in here anymore. There's not room for both things because you're not letting yourself let the feeling pass. You're holding on to it like your most prized possession because it's mine. I get to have it. Like you think somebody's going to rob you of getting to have an experience of anger. Have the experience and let it go, but you're not letting it go. Yeah. And so as I had that conversation, they were like, okay, I get what you're saying. So I need to like get it out. I said, yes. So do I need to go and have this exchange with this person? I said, no, because anger is destructive in that way. No, you know, you need to get it out of your mind and out of your body. That's what you need to do. Go have an invisible conversation. Go have it in your mind, say everything you need to say and get it out. And so anyway, it was very interesting based on the conversation you and I have had today because of how convinced we are of our human condition, which we call this person, which we identify as.
Yeah, this is our reality. This is who I am.
Yes. And because of the climate of healing that we've been subjected to, we then learn to be empowered by how we feel. That feeling is powerful. Yes. And I don't think feeling isn't powerful, but what I do think is that if feeling becomes your God, then you're really in a mess because you start to hold it close to you. Well, these are my feelings. This is how I feel. This is my truth. And what you're saying is, this is who I am. Right. And I said today in that conversation, I said, it's not who you are. You're actually pure joy. That's who you are. But you're acting like, but I get to be angry. And I'm like, and you do. But how long you want to do that? Because you're poisoning yourself with your anger. You are punishing your joy with your anger. So that's where the conflict is. So anyway, they got it worked out and their body actually calmed down. And all that stuff, all of the demonstration started to subside and go away. It was pure miracle, you know. But in light of our conversation, this is important because it's our personality that demands the demonstration. Mm-hmm. You know, which is what you're saying. It's like this part of us that's like, and you and I talked today too about this conundrum of Neville speaks about assuming the wish fulfilled. Yes. And so it's like, well, if I'm not supposed to be after the need to demonstrate ultimately, if that's my ultimate place I'm going, then why even demonstrate? You know, when you start to have a concept of that in your head, it's like, why even demonstrate? And it was a question I asked myself deeply. I was like, well, if none of this really matters, right? What are we doing? And in the deep places within me, the response was exactly, what are you doing? because you're making such a big deal about all this, about knowing this information. Oh, am I supposed to do it like this? Oh, let me go do it like this. Oh, am I supposed to do it like this? And my soul is looking at the situation going, Jody, get perspective.
Yeah. Are we still here? Are we really still here?
You get to do it how you choose.
Yeah.
So what do you choose? And I have to go back to the conversation I said earlier. Well, I would choose the best thing possible. Why not have it at the highest and best expression possible? Not just for me, for everything that is in my world, in my universe.
Yep.
So anyway, that was my rant, but
yeah, I don't think that's a rant. I just think that attachment to personality and to those facets of identity that we've created for ourselves are strong. It's like they're so ingrained. And I think that's the whole feeling thing for me. That has been a theme over the past couple months. And I feel like finally I'm like, yeah, that's one of the senses that we have to kind of learn to ignore sometimes, especially because most of the time, our feelings are based off of previous experiences that are based off of old beliefs, old erroneous beliefs. And so if we just look at that, that ends up being a cycle. It's like, oh, I have these erroneous beliefs that create these experiences. And then I have all of these feelings about them that develop into all of these thoughts, into these beliefs, into these experiences. Oh, here we go. We're on a loop. We're literally just running the same thing over and over again. And putting a stop to that is not easy. That's work. That's work. To be like, I'm going to pull all of my energy out of those senses, including that sense of feeling. I'm going to take my eyes off of it. Not going to hear it. And when I feel certain things about it, I'm going to ignore that and appropriate what I want instead. It's much easier, like after my soul session with you, I will say, which is why I recommend every single person get a soul session with Jody if she's still doing them, because it became a million times easier when I started to feel certain just unhelpful, like not beneficial things. It became easier for me to pull back from that and look at it from my soul's perspective and be like, this is not a big deal. Why am I, you know what I mean? Like, don't waste your time on this. Don't waste your time on this. What do you want to, like, this comes from old patterns. Do you want me to show you these old patterns? They're here, here, and here. Do you want to continue with this? I thought we were done with that. And I'm like, yeah, we are done with that. And so then I'd be able to feel myself being like, then let's look forward and let's stop looking back. Okay. And I'm like, okay. Right. It's like, those are the kind of conversations I was literally having after that. And it became so much, not easier, but so much simpler to just let those things, including the feelings, just let them go, let them pass. Like, did that mean that I wouldn't feel angry about something or hurt about something or whatever, triggered about something? No, of course, I could still feel that, but I was able to feel it and then look at it and be like, oh yeah, that's old. Okay. What's new?
This is so massive because as you're saying this, I'm just like inside of me, I'm like, yes, yes, yes. This was the power of connecting deeply with my soul. People talk about being soul led and soul this, and I'm like, but do you really know what that means? Have you had a real experience of it? Because most people have to wait until physical death to have an experience of what it's like to finally lay down all of the thoughts and feelings of this container. And when you finally drop it and you step out of it and you're like, oh, wait a minute, why did I ever give my time to this thing or that thing? Is what people call a life review.
Yep.
Guess what? You can do a life review any old time you want to.
Yeah.
And you don't have to lay this physical body down to do it permanently. You can lay it down temporarily and step into the realm of your soul and get perspective and go, what is it that really matters here? Why did I come here? What was it again that I was sent here to do? Oh, that's right. It was to remember myself and remember my power and remember the truth of me and remember that I am connected to all things and all good all the time. And I get to call it the way I choose. I can be responsible for my life. And that's not a scary thing.
Right.
And it is an empowering place to be there. And it does require you to leave behind your so-called, I love this statement, your so-called humanhood.
Yeah.
Your so-called human condition. You've been conditioned in your humanity. And we said this before we started recording. You're conditioned through the human hive mind, whatever you want to call it, to suffering and pain and struggle and overcoming and being resilient. That is a human condition.
Yeah, it is.
People are very proud of being a survivor. And you get to do that here if that's what you choose. And trust me, you're choosing it even if you're asleep at the wheel.
Yes. Especially if you're asleep at the wheel. Right. Especially, right? And I've been there. Like, who hasn't been there? Like, I've been there with all of those experiences made me who I am today. Nonsense.
Right.
Nonsense.
And the thing is, you can continue that path if that's what you choose.
Yep.
Being proud of what you've overcome. Hey, I'm not here to take it away from you.
Yeah. Struggle. Right. Yeah. You want to embrace your struggle, embrace your struggle.
Yeah. I'm just here to say, if you could do it different, if right now in this moment, here and now, you could stand in a place that you've been dreaming of in your mind without all the struggle, would you do it? And I can tell you right now, some people have made their struggle their God. And they would say, no, I'd never get rid of it. It made me who I am. Okay. Well, who am you? Because you're still talking about your personality. You are still talking about your personality. You're not talking about the I am in you.
Right.
And that's a whole nother level of living, you know? And I can honestly say that at the time that I started reading and taking information in around that idea, I didn't even know what I was processing. I didn't even know. I thought I knew. I had a concept of a concept.
I wanted to want. I wanted to want.
It's taken a lot of time to get here, and it's taken a lot of struggle to get here. But I can tell you, when I finally got here and I saw it for what it really was, I was like, oh, well, let's do away with that.
Yes.
Why do I want to perpetuate that into future generations? I don't.
Right.
No value in it. None.
Right.
I'm grateful for the fact that I finally woke up to who I really was and what I had the ability to do. So let's just start from there.
Yes. Yes. And let's revise everything that I thought I had to endure to get wherever I am right now. Let's just revise all of that, because I didn't have to go through those things to get here. And that was a big thing for me. That was a big part of like my personality, my false identity that I had to drop out, was that whole idea of, well, all of those things got me where I am. Mm-hmm. Did I have to go through all of that to get to where I am? I don't think so.
No.
I don't think so.
No, I don't think so. And what's cool about getting where I am is that whatever it was that got me to where I am, got me to the point that realized I didn't have to have that to get where I am. Right. That's the genius of it. I said to you today, I was like, isn't it wild that the polarity of the human condition is what finally, if we are awake to it, finally leads us to the understanding that I don't have to exist in polarity.
Right.
It's wild.
It is wild.
The
and
sickness leads you to the cure. The sickness leads you to the cure if you freaking let yourself understand what's really going on. Unless you want to identify with your sickness, and then you just get to be sick.
Right. And perpetuate that. And every other kind of sin, right? Like that's the being out of alignment. Like sin is being out of alignment with the I am, with God. Like, yeah.
Yes. Being asleep, unaware of the truth of your being. That's what sin is.
Yeah.
Asleepness.
Yeah.
It's literally
in any way.
Yes.
Yeah.
And so you said something today. I'm going to pull it up because it was important. And I thought, I want you to talk about this a little bit. Let me find it really quick. Oh, yeah. You were talking about appropriating the wish fulfilled because we were going back and forth, just understanding, the difference between I live in this human existence, I'm having this experience now, but the edict of prayer essentially is you must live in the answer and ignore the now. And that just sets people on edge because everybody's like, no, you have to be present, you need to be in the present moment. And so this was the conversation you and I started having, like, oh my gosh, are we at a conflict? Are we experiencing some kind of spiritual conflict here? Like, what's the reality of this? So I wondered if you would talk about where you're at in the understanding of the appropriation of the wish fulfilled.
Yeah. I think if we're not careful, the reason it can feel so weird to talk about that is because it can feel a lot if you're not doing it from the right space, it can feel a lot like fake it till you make it. And I think that was my problem, is that is how I was viewing it. I was definitely viewing it as, okay, so if I want to be like abundant or whatever, right, then I have to fake it till I make it. I have to act abundant, and I have to try to conjure feelings of abundance, and I have to, you know what I mean? Like, and I hate everything about the way that fake it till you make it thing feels. I don't, there's something about it that has always been really icky for me. I don't like the feeling of that. And so I was sitting in that concept of like, okay, living in the wish fulfilled. And I'm like, man, there's something about this that feels like fake it till you make it. And so I just started kind of praying about this. Like, and when I pray about things like this, I'm like, show me what's real. Show me what's true. Show me what's true about this. And it really, like, it comes back to this whole concept for me of like, I and my Father are one. What is true of I am, right? And so then I'm going to go through and I'm going to say what I know is true of I am, right? I am healthy and I am abundant and all of these things. And I'm going to say them from that soul place. I'm going to connect with that soul place that knows that is absolutely true. So it's basically like, kind of like in Paul's words, right? I'm putting off the old man.
Yeah.
I'm putting off the Shannon who's over here being like, oh, but I don't know and whatever. And I'm like, shh, shh, shh. Like, just do your thing over there for a minute. Like, I'm going to come into this place and I'm going to remember on a soul level who I am, that I and my Father are one, and that apart from God, I can do nothing. I'm going to be still and know that I am God. And I don't think there's anything more being in the present moment than that. Right. So, because that was the conundrum for me, was like, oh my goodness, I'm going to have to live in this wish fulfilled. I'm going to have to create this fantasy world in my head and pretend to be all of these things. And that just, nothing about that felt right. But I realized, like, I mean, I guess it can sound like that on kind of a shallow level if you're talking about it. But I think what we're really talking about is getting in touch with that place in ourself that does not change, that unchangeable I am, and sitting in and staying in as much as is possible for us, that space. That is the true present anyways. That's the only present. Everything else is an illusion, right?
Yep. So good. That is so good. It makes me think of my own process as I've just evolved through my spiritual understanding and how much I have to use deductive reasoning with myself. I'm a deductive reasoner. Like, there's times whenever there's argument going on internally and I have to use deductive reasoning to go, well, if A equals B and B equals C, then A equals C. You know what I mean? It's like we have to break it down to the most basic for Jody sometimes, because that personality is like screaming, I don't know how I'm going to accept this as the truth for me. And so as you were saying that, I thought, in Neville's teaching of assuming the wish fulfilled, which really was that thing that led me back to, it was reminiscent of things that I had heard early on in my spiritual process of like, you know, who are you going to have to become to be this? And what is it that you're going to have to step into? And how would that person act and be? And it does feel like you're putting on a costume a lot of times, you know? And the way you just explained it is so perfect for me anyway, in helping bring crystallization to the fact that it's like, no, 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 this is the shedding of all of that and the coming back to the truth of who I am and anchoring myself down into that, because
Yep.
that is the wish fulfilled.
Yes.
That's the answered prayer, because everything is there. It's why Jesus said, seek ye first the kingdom, and it's righteousness. Righteousness is to be understood as perfect alignment.
Yep.
Right thinking.
Yep. And then all these things will be added to you.
And all the stuff is a non-issue.
Right.
Because it's never been about the stuff.
Because that's part of the I am. That right. Stuff follows the I am. That's what it is. Yeah. And it is. So that was the difference for me. It was like, okay, I don't have to put something else on. I just have to take all of these things off. That's the difference. Right. Like, because I've been in that camp of like, yes, who would I be and how would I walk and talk and feel and think? And I'm like, I don't know. That's crazy. Right. Like, I don't know. Like, I'm not a great appropriator in that way, but that's not what we're supposed to appropriate. We're supposed to appropriate our I am, and how we appropriate our I am is to take off anything that I am not.
Exactly. Could it be any simpler? I love it.
It's simple. It's not easy, right? No. Like, that's still like, it's a practice. Like, for anybody who, you know, wants to try this out on a practical level, it is sitting with myself. Like, it is just kind of getting quiet and telling, you know, my Shan suit, as I refer to this personality, and, you know, all of the identities that I have, it's setting all of those aside and kind of saying, like, show me what's real and true. Like, and sometimes I have to strip away things individually. Like, you know, if somebody says, who are you? That question used to be a rough question for me. Well, I'm Shannon, and I'm a wife, and I'm a mom, and I'm a, you know, right? All of these labels, all of these identities, all of these things that we have identified with, and it's sometimes peeling those away, like one by one, and instead coming back to, no, I am. And how do you describe I am? Right? I am infinite. I am limitless. I am abundance. I am health. I am good. It just becomes a different conversation. Like, when you start looking at it from that space.
I mean, completely. And it makes me think about, you and I were just in a healing circle this last week with a bunch of other people. And the experience in that circle, the process in that circle, is to bring people into that connected space of alignment where all that other stuff gets dropped. And you can see what's really going on, what's true. And something that's so powerful is, for me in this conversation, is all of the urges and impetus that we have to express a demonstration, to demonstrate, is coming from a soul urge that says, God is in here. God needs to be expressed. God needs to be brought out for everyone to see. That's what we're here to do as human beings, from my perspective, is to reveal the glory of God.
Yeah.
I do it in my body through health. I do it in my life through true relationship. You know, I do it in my purpose through abundant expression and joy that comes out of me. Those are the ways I reveal the glory of God. That's what I'm actually here to do. I'm not here for any other reason. I'm not here to be wealthy and be on the Forbes, you know, list. I'm not here if that happens in the process, that would just be a side effect of me actually being who I came here to be, which is the
Yep.
fullness of God expressed.
Yep. In the
So,
Jody suit.
right, right. In this suit that I have focused all of my consciousness into and projected it into this simulation, into this hologram, and learning how to master the universe I'm creating.
Right.
Be the master of it. So as we're talking about this, I'm thinking about that healing circle and how that we get to tap into that place for a moment, for everyone there to experience that aspect of themselves that is limitless, that doesn't know any no in their life, no obstacles. And it's like, that's what we're here to know about ourselves and to tap into. So you talking about the wish fulfilled is that place, because all of the wishes we desire to demonstrate are the urges of a soul that says you need to know the fullness of God. So guess what? I'm going to give you an urge to make more money. I'm going to give you an urge to have a better career, because we got to start somewhere. We got to start you on the path where you're at.
Yep.
So
That's
these
it.
desires, I love this. These desires that come through are the impulses of God demanding expression so we can know the greatness of ourselves incrementally. I heard someone say this last week that I think it was Darwin and another scientist who were studying, the human itself and the parts of the human body. And I said this to you earlier, and they were talking about the nervous system and the ganglion of nerves that are collected in the solar plexus, and that is the seat of desire in the human being. But desire is the attractive, energetic thing you can't see that's pulling the human together and forming the human being, forming them and their world. It's desire that's actually doing this, which was so incredible to me, because we're talking about this now as this impulse that literally expresses a bigger aspect of our soul, which is this God part of us, right? And thinking about all of that and living in the wish fulfilled is like living in the desire.
Yep.
Completed, fulfilled, done, and so it is. So that then our world must demonstrate it. So that, and I said this to you in the message earlier, it was like, there is the natural graduation of I must demonstrate to prove this godness inside of me into I am that.
Right.
I am the demonstration, like what you're talking about that Jesus did in his ministry.
Yes.
The demonstration.
He just was being, but he was a walking demonstration, because that everything about that just flowed out of him, right? He said, apart from the Father, I can do nothing. But that's what happens when you are always connected to the Father, right? Yes. Your life is a walking demonstration.
Right.
You are a walking, talking, breathing demonstration.
Right.
And that was him getting personality out of the way, right? Like this Jesus person, and really appropriating the Father.
Yes. You remember
I and my Father are one.
Yep. You remember the story in the Bible where the blind man comes to him to have his sight restored, and the disciples asked him after he healed him, whose sin was it that caused this man to be blind? Was it his father's sin or was it his sin? Because the man had been blind since birth, the story says. And Jesus said it was neither. Neither of those things were the cause. The reason for this blindness was so that everyone here could know the glory of God. And that's the real truth.
Yep.
Of everything that we suffer and everything that we go through. We could trace all of our trauma genetically if we want to, because it's been carried there. But maybe at some point you just get to the point where it's like, it wasn't for any of those reasons. It was for this moment right now, so that you could come back to the remembrance of yourself and know the glory of God, the undoer of all the error.
Yep.
that became my experience in that moment, in the session that happened here internally within me, of like my soul looking at me and going, why are you so worried about all this stuff? Demonstrating, not demonstrating. What are we talking about?
Right.
You get to have it however you want. How do you want it? Well, I was like, well, I don't want this. I would have never chose. Well, then get rid of it.
Then do something different, then choose something different.
Choose it different.
Right. Because that thing is true too, right? Like clarity is magnetic.
Mm-hmm.
Clarity is absolutely magnetic. And what's funny is sometimes we're really clear on what we don't want. And that's magnetic.
Clearer on what I don't want than
Same.
sometimes when I'm like, ask
Same.
me for dinner. I'll tell you everything I don't want to eat.
Clarity is magnetic. And having clarity on what you don't want is also magnetic for those things that you don't want. And yeah, and I'm like, and that is why to me this stripping away process is the thing. And I think because I had a similar experience with my soul, where my soul is basically like, you're over here like freaking out about this thing, ruminating on this thing, really like allowing your very currently unruly mind to run this show for things that are not even a blip on the radar.
Right.
And I was like, not a blip on the radar. Like, are you kidding? Like, I've agonized over this. This is torture. This is whatever. I have suffered, you know, like all of the conversation about that. And my soul's basically like, is that what you want?
Right.
Is that where you want to stay? Because that means nothing.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm like, oh, that means nothing. And then immediately I was like, that means nothing. Like, I knew it. I felt it. I felt things just drop away. Like, it was insane what I was able to just let go of. And now, and then it's like, my soul's like, great. So can we focus again on this I am? Can we refocus on that? So it's like, that's where I'm trying to bring my attention back to now. Every time a distraction comes up, you know how I love that word, I love to talk about distractions, but I really think that anything that gets us to take our mind, which is a tool, that's it, off of I am, is a distraction.
Yep.
Anything.
Yes. And I sent you a message today after we were having a little bit of this exchange, and I said, perhaps Neville's formula for moving to the place of no longer needing to demonstrate was his statement of, you must remove your attention from your present state of affairs. All of this, you must remove your attention, all of your senses, your feelings, those are all attention, forms of attention. You must remove your attention from that and only focus your perspective, your attention, your awareness on the wish fulfilled. And what's interesting about that is that's the formula he gave.
Yep.
And then people go, okay, so how do I do that? Tell me, what are the steps? What do I need to do? It's like, stop looking at the world of conditions and believing in their reality.
Right. Well, and Neville has a really specific formula for it. He is very much the like, get into that state akin to sleep, that very kind of meditative, kind of place, and start focusing your attention, right, on what it is that you want, which if we go back to desire,
right,
that desire is a place that God is wanting to come through and express.
Yes.
Like, and I feel like kind of after our conversation this morning, it just was like, oh, of course, that is the baby step for, you know what I mean? Like, this is the precursor over here for what Jesus was doing over here.
Yes.
Like, this is the practice of this thing. Like, you have to practice taking your eyes off the material world, right? Because if Jesus would have sat there looking at the fishes and loaves and being like, oh my God, I don't know how we're going to make this happen. Like, I'm going to just start imagining that they're all full of, like, can you just, that's not in there.
Right.
He didn't do that, right? So it's like, this is the baby step. This is the learning how, like, okay, this is desire. This is a place where God is desiring to come through, which means that I have everything I need. Has everything that I need to accomplish this, to achieve this. So I can know that this is done because it's a desire. So I can see it. I can picture it. I can feel it, live in it, and ignore anything else.
Anything else.
Right? And that is the practice of how you get over here.
That is it.
And I'm still practicing. I want to be very clear about where I am at in this process.
I said to Shannon today, when we were talking, I said, I think that there is value in pursuing the demonstration, because you've got to build the muscle of, I can do this because of this thing that I am, until you graduate in your levels of consciousness, because that manifestation level of consciousness is just the second evolution of consciousness from victimhood. It's just that step up. But from there, you start to go, oh, I'm the channel for all this stuff to flow through, which is what we're talking about right now, right? I become the channel for this to flow through in my life, until those demonstrations become so fluid that you live in that surrendered state of desire, letting it just express through you at will.
Yep.
And then you're like, well, I am the demonstration. I don't need to demonstrate because I am the demonstration. I live in the demonstration constantly, and we touch it. I know there's moments where you get into it and you start saying that to yourself and you're like, oh, I can feel that. I just had this experience yesterday. I am personally in a 40-day process. So collectively, and a lot of my other spaces doing a 40-day process, but personally, I'm taking this chance to do a specific 40-day process. And the meditative statement yesterday had to do with my soul's awareness of itself as this inner thing that just pulses through me. And I had this whole revelation in this moment. I was like, I keep trying to see myself, and I'm looking at myself as this body, and I know that's not myself. I've got to get myself connected to the truth and the reality of me, which is not this body.
Nope.
I keep imagining this impulse pulsing through my body into the world. And it's like, no, I am the thing that's viewing the body, viewing the world, and I have to get myself back to that awareness. So we touch it, we get glimpses of this, the more that we saturate our mind with these truths.
Yeah, I think that's absolutely true. Because I was thinking about that in terms of like, the levels with the manifest, you've got the victim, you've got the manifesting, you've got the channel, and then you've got just pure consciousness over here, living its best life. But I was thinking like of all of the different limitations kind of that can associate with each part of it, right? Because it's like, well, from the manifesting part, it's like bringing things into this physical matrix, this physical reality. It is very much this argument of substance, right? Yeah. And then over here, when we're like the channel, it's about time and how it takes time to process this. It takes time for this to come through, right? And then by the time you're over here, it's like substance, time, they're irrelevant. Exactly. I am, and it flows. Exactly. I am, and it flows. That's magic right there. That is amazing.
It's powerful. And I mean, for me, I can honestly say it's what I am aiming at. You know what I mean? Like, that's where I'm aiming. That's where I've turned and pivoted my ship. That's where I'm headed, and the journey of that has been so incredible. And honestly, to look back and go, oh, these are all the things that led me to this place, without worshiping them and without idolizing them and being like, oh, I'm so grateful. Because I'm not. I'm going to just tell you the truth right now. When I look back at it, I'm not sitting here going, so grateful for that trouble. so grateful for that horrible thing that I went through.
Oh, that
Not
sucked. And I don't ever want to do it again.
don't ever want to do it again. It's why I've said so many times, I've told people this, and I've had other people say it to me. I'm not coming back here. This is it. I'm done with this. Peace out. When I'm out, I'm out. Don't be acting like I'm coming back, because I'm not. And then I had to laugh at myself and go, oh, so you think you're learning all your lessons right now? You're going to get it all done. And here's the reality of it from where I stand. I'm not coming back to this iteration. I'm not coming back to this layer of whatever this is. I'm not, because I wouldn't be able to, because where I'm headed, where I'm going is a higher state.
Yep.
And so whatever that other iteration will be, it will be higher. It will be broader. It will be more aware. It will be far more aware of itself. So anyway,
it's all about what you believe anyway. So
it truly is. This is so true. Was there anything else that you feel like is pertinent to this conversation that's helpful to people in terms of moving from where they are into what it is that we're sharing?
Yeah, I mean, you teach this in Prayer Circle, and I'm sure in other places, but it really is just, for me, about sitting with that idea. I and my Father are one.
Mm-hmm.
I and my Father are one.
Yeah. And we come back to that every time we have our conversations, because there's no other conversation.
That's the only thing that matters. That's it. That if people want to know how to access that I am space, right? And I think that there's a level, probably, at least for me, there has been. This is a limiting belief, I'm sure, but whatever. I don't want to put on anyone else. But for me, it feels like that is a space that I come back to, and not a space that I currently abide in.
Right.
And abiding is the goal.
Yes, it is.
Right? Because it's the abiding that gets us from over here to over here.
Mm-hmm.
So if we can start abiding in the Father,
mm-hmm.
right? That's it. So the more we practice that and expand into that, grow into that, get comfortable, get settled in that space, the easier it becomes to get into that, and to stay in that, and to abide in that.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I agree with you. I think there is only one thing we're all doing here. And you can journey down as many paths as you want. And I've heard people say this, there's one truth, and people take all these paths to get back to it. And I'm at the point in my life where I'm like, that is what's happening. There is only one thing that your soul is ever urging you onto, and that is coming home.
Yep.
To God, in you, as you, expressing itself, and to the extent that you're willing, letting it be fully manifest.
Yes.
In the world around you. So I think that's the only thing that's happening, and you get to have all the experiences along the way until you come to that realization yourself. So yeah. Until next time, this conversation will be continued as always, but I'm so glad we got to have this one. So until we meet again.